Netmarble, Tencent, and private equity fund MBK Partners have formed a consortium so they can build for Nexon. Back in January, it was reported that Nexon founder Kim Jung-ju was looking to sell a 98.65% controlling stake in the MapleStory and Dungeon Fighter Online creator for $8.9 billion. Now, the Korea Times claims Netmarble, Tencent, and MBK will table a preliminary bid for the South Korean developer-publisher on February 21st. For what it's worth, Tencent and Nexon have worked together in the past, with the former holding the distribution rights to Dungeon Fighter Online in China. Netmarble, which is part-owned by Tencent, has also expressed an interest in the purchase, and is worried about the prospect of Nexon falling into the hands of an overseas company. Netmarble reviewed the acquisition of Nexon 2 months ago, and made a final decision a month ago, commented a Netmarble official. We believe that the tangible and intangible value of Nexon is a very important asset for the country. If Nexon is sold to an overseas firm, the Korean game industry and the ecosystem could be damaged, and its competitiveness weakened. Motoi Okamoto is the founder of the game developer Entersphere, which produced titles like Icon of Health for PlayStation Vita. Has also a Gamasutra blogger, but from 1999 to 2008, he participated in the development of some of Nintendo's best-loved and biggest-selling titles as a programmer, and a script writer and game designer in Shigeru Miyamoto's Entertainment Analysis and Development EAD department. During his decade at Nintendo, Okamoto had a hand in creating Pikmin, Super Mario 64 DS, Wii Play, and Wii Fit. With each new game, he was one of the first designers to explore the possibilities of mood input methods like the touchscreen, motion controls, and balance board. In this exclusive interview with Gamasutra, Okamoto speaks about his experiences at it, some of the design lessons he learned there, and some fascinating behind-the-scenes tales of working with the minds behind Mario. Remarks have been edited for space and clarity. My experience at Nintendo was a golden time in my game design life, and I am grateful to my old boss, the Grandmaster Miyamoto, and to my many colleagues. In Japan, major companies including Nintendo prefer to hire new graduates over mid-career workers. Those companies do not need a work-ready candidate, but a graduate rich in potential. This is because they believe that they should give new employees proper training on their own. This is the unique employment environment and industry culture of Japan. And Nintendo, probably even now, is an old-fashioned Japanese company. Let me explain the background. Since Nintendo was battling Sony's PlayStation, the company tried to increase the number of excellent new graduates with knowledge of mathematics and physics, a trend that continues today. As long as those new graduates had a solid knowledge of mathematics and physics, they did not necessarily need to know programming. In my case, fortunately, I had both the knowledge and 3D programming experience. In my university days, I worked as an intern at a game company called United Nations Entertainment, which was funded by a Nintendo joint venture called Marigul, and in the programming candidates who were assigned to EAD, the development department that Shigeru Miyamoto managed, had to get trained in 3D programming. Sometimes this training would consist of learning to display and animate a 3D model of Mario. Some of us then participated in a project that it was advancing cloud system. EAD managers thought that they should build a common development environment, including middleware, engines, and tools for all lead game titles, which included Mario and Zelda, so that they could be sure of completing these very important titles on schedule. At that time, other middleware like Renderware began to become available, but most Japanese game companies chose to build in-house engines and tools on their own. Eventually there were about 15 people working on JSYSTEM. When its development was almost complete, I started to spend some time researching new technologies, like shading. A designer who had seen the full effects in Rare as Star Fox Adventures came in and said to the in-house technology group, "We want to do that too. So cannot you do it?" Fortunately, not. After the GameCube, Nintendo did not think about putting out high-performance game machines like PlayStation 3 RX 360. Knowing that, I decided to switch jobs from graphic programmer to full-time game designer. The performance of Wii was roughly twice that of GameCube, so we could keep using JSYSTEM up through The Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess. I do not know what Skyward Sword used. When the Nintendo DS came out, the JSYSTEM development team switched over to creating development environments for both first and third parties. My first impression after entering Nintendo was that the company was, surprisingly, a big traditional Japanese company. There were many elderly employees who had been working there before they had ever launched their first video game console. All employees had to submit a daily report on paper every day. In 1999, when each of us had a PC on our desk, even the software development staff wore a company uniform like the ones the workers were in the factory. Of course, I had known in advance that the company was old-fashioned, but when I actually experienced it, it was older-fashioned than I had imagined. But within that old-fashioned organization, the development studios pursued their own unique rationality, such as the development of JSYSTEM. A few years after I joined, our president Hiroshi Yamauchi stepped down in favor of the young president Satoru Iwata. He would dramatically reform the old Nintendo, analyzing the problems of the company one by one. First, he moved a part of it into a different department that was called Speed. That was the team that created development environments, and which also worked together with overseas game studios. In this way, he created an environment such that Miyamoto could concentrate on only his studio's titles. Second, he promoted personnel changes and information exchanges between departments in the company. Believe it or not, members of the departments that developed Game Boy Advance games did not know the technical detailed specifications of GameCube, and vice versa. I am not kidding. Like the great warlord Oda Nobunaga, Yamauchi wanted his vassals to compete with each other. Nintendo once had 3 hardware development departments plus it. Each of these 3 departments had its own game development team, and Yamauchi made the leaders of these departments compete with each other. This resulted in successes like the Nintendo Entertainment System and Game Boy. But the departments never shared information with each other. It occupied a special position in the company. If one of our game consoles did not sell well, the divisions would criticize it, saying that the failure was because it could not create a home-run hit piece of software. My old boss Miyamoto has continued to bear the responsibility of home-run hitter, especially since the death of the Nintendo 64. Iwata reformed many parts of Nintendo, but tried to utilize and activate the good old parts as well. This was a good decision. One of the reasons is that he was originally an employee of another company, and had not worked at Nintendo before. Old-fashioned Japanese firms trust and love the members who have worked there for many years, "Who is Iwata?" the older members would ask. However, he had his comrades in the game development teams, who had worked together with him for a much longer time, since he was an excellent programmer at HAL Laboratories, which had worked closely with Nintendo on game designs. As president, he needed to increase the number of comrades who agreed with him, and calm those who did not. This was the hardest game Iwata ever played, but he beat it. I think that Yamauchi had a great genius for picking up talents. Remember that it was him who discovered both Gunpei Yokoi and Shigeru Miyamoto. Nintendo did not look for game design expertise when it hired new graduates. Of course, when hiring someone who was mid-career, they looked for an expert. But as new graduates, we were employed as programmers or artists, and then some of us changed our jobs to a planner,